Welcome back to another Ret Paladin video. Verabin here. Today we are looking at a conduit that I believe has flown under the radar a little bit in PvP. That's the Virtuous Command conduit. This is the one where you pop a judgment and then it gives you a little bit of additional holy damage on some of our abilities. So this is one that I haven't seen many people use in PvP. Most people are using Templar's Vindication, or they're using Ring and Clarity, or both. So I think that this is one that might actually be pretty good. I'm going to do some testing on it and see in PvP. We're going to look at some of the drawbacks of it as well, I don't think that it's all that cut and dry, but stick around. We are going to investigate this one and see if it's going to be any good in PvP. All right, so the testing I wanted to do is basically to try to figure out what is a better damage conduit, potency conduit. Is that Ring and Clarity, or is that actually Virtuous Command? So when we look at our the changes that were made to Ring and Clarity in 9.0.5, it definitely made me think a little bit about, okay, how much damage is this thing actually going to do, on top of the fact that it only procs about half of the time. At the eye level 200, the one that I have, the one that I think is readily available, that one, it's only 56%. So at that point, half the time almost, your conduit's worthless, right? It's doing 0 damage. So it got me thinking, hey, I wonder if some of these other conduits are going to be better. And unfortunately, our finesse conduits and our endurance conduits aren't really all that good. So we're looking at what are some other conduits that might be better. And then I came to Virtuous Command. I actually just looted the eye level 200 Virtuous Command, which gives you about 11% additional damage as holy on several of our big abilities, including Final Verdict. So if you're running Final Verdict, basically we're looking at different ways that we can actually maximize our damage with this new lovely legendary that's doing so much damage that we really want to try to kind of double down on that, increase our burst and stuff like that. So we're going to look at some DPS testing now. All right, so basically in this testing, what I did was I looked at a PvP dummy and I looked at how much damage I could do in just a 30-second wings window. I know this doesn't necessarily match kind of what you might see in real life in PvP, but that's kind of the closest I could get to. So we saw how much damage we can do in a 30-second damage window. So when I ran this test with Ring and Clarity, I pretty much always got the same results. I got in between, and the values, the actual values don't really matter, right? It's the relative values to what we're seeing with other conduits. So what I got was in the range of like 210 to 220,000 damage, sometimes 230. It varied a little bit depending on if Ring and Clarity proc, depending on how many Templar's Vindication procs that I got. All right, so the next test that I did was I did 5 or 10 tests on each of these setups, and this is using Virtuous Command and Templar's Vindication rather than Ring and Clarity. And what I found, and obviously these are kind of tough to test because there's a lot of different variables and things like that. It's only a 20-second test, so there's a lot of RNG involved. But what I found was that the one with Virtuous Command does about 10, maybe sometimes 20% additional damage over the period of time over just our burst window. And obviously, like I said, that could be because of so much RNG that's in the Ring and Clarity plus Templar's Vindication build. But after running 5 or 10 in each, I didn't see any that were, when I ran Virtuous Command, I didn't see any that were ever as low as the Ring and Clarity ones. So I think that it definitely does more damage overall, just kind of raw damage over the course of our bursts. All right, so at first glance, just through the testing that I did, I think that it seems like Virtuous Command is definitely the better conduit. I think it's not a surprise that that Ring and Clarity kind of got knocked down a peg because of the nerfs that it received in PvP. It's definitely still a really strong conduit in PvE, but the PvP nerfs definitely made it do a lot less damage, and it was already kind of getting nerfed and things like that. But anyway, so I think that one of the big drawbacks, though, to Virtuous Command, if you did not know, is that Virtuous Command only procs in melee range. So the tooltip doesn't say anything about this, and so I submitted a bug ticket to Blizzard because I don't think that it's intended that this only works like at 5 yards of range, because the tooltip doesn't say anything about that. You can use things like Blade of Justice, and it procs Virtuous Command, but Blade of Justice has a longer than 5 yard range. So why would it proc off of that, but then at the range that you could use Blade of Justice, it can't do the damage. So I think that it's a bug. I don't think that it's intended, but I don't know if it'll get fixed or not. But anyway, that's a pretty big drawback to it, because the same thing is true with Final Verdict, right? Where you can use it from 10 yards away. Well, but if you use Final Verdict from 10 yards away, your Virtuous Command additional damage won't happen. So that kind of sucks, right? That's one of the things that you have to keep in mind, and it may depend on the kind of matchups that you're seeing and stuff like that, which of these conduits you want to use. Obviously, Ring and Clarity is going to give you a little bit more range damage, so if you're playing against casters a lot, then it might be that Ring and Clarity actually does end up doing more damage because you're constantly getting kited by those casters. So I'm actually going to dump Ring and Clarity for now and see how it goes in PvP. Obviously, the dummy damage isn't necessarily what you can trust, right? You can't really just say, okay, well, it does more damage on the dummy, so that means that you should be using it, right? I mean, not necessarily. So I think against a lot of teams, like I said, a lot of casters, it's probably not going to end up being the play. But think about this. It does 11% additional damage guaranteed on your biggest hitting ability. So if this was a PvE encounter, you would 100% take this Conduit, right? It does a lot of damage, and it also does damage on a lot of your other abilities, your auto attacks, your Crusader Strike, your Blade of Justice. So it does really good damage, and on the meters, it only ends up being like maybe 4 or 5% additional damage. But during your burst window, you need that additional damage. And how many times have you been just about to get a kill, and then the person gets away with 1% HP or 2% or 5% HP, and that additional damage can be a big deal. I mean, in PvP, I've had Final Verdict hit for 15, 18, 25k even. And so if it hits for 25k, then Virtuous Command is going to give you another 2,500, 26, 2,700 damage, right? So that ends up being a significant amount of damage, especially during your burst window. So I highly recommend this one. I think you guys should try it out. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of good conduits, so you're going to have enough conduit energy to test this back and forth every once in a while. So that's what I did with the dummies. I just wasted conduit energy switching back and forth. So it's definitely something you should try out. I think it's interesting that kind of a nerf to one conduit brings another one up, in relativity. So that's all for the video, guys. I appreciate the support. We just recently hit 4,000 subscribers, so I'm really, really excited about that. Please be sure to hush that like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Yeah.